There is one driver on the F1 grid in 2025 who has got a point to prove. Yuki Tsunoda has been a driver who has had many ups and downs during his F1 career so far. He joined the sport in 2021 and had a very impressive season in F2 in 2020. He won 3 races and finished 3rd in the standings. And he also won FIA Rookie of the Year award, the only Japanese driver to do so as well. On top of all that, the most impressive thing Yuki Tsunoda did in F2 was rattle Nikita Mazepin so bad that he tried to run him over with a signpost. So as I said, Yuki came into F1 in 2021. Thanks to his Honda connections, he was driving for AlphaTauri and he was put into the Red Bull system. Many people were tipping him to become the next big star in F1. This includes the likes of Martin Brundle, who I remember in pre-season testing during 2021, he was really impressed by Tsunoda and saying this kid's got huge potential. However, despite all of that, Yuki didn't quite live up to his potential during 2021, as he made way too many mistakes and was really inconsistent. For example, in Imola, he spun the car on the exit of the final chicane, sending himself straight into the wall and out of the race. Also, Yuki was nowhere near his teammate Pierre Gasly. During most weekends, Gasly would absolutely obliterate Tsunoda. Gasly also finished the 2021 season on 110 points. However, Yuki could only manage 32, which was nowhere near good enough. He did show some flashes of potential during 2021. For example, in the final race in Abu Dhabi, it's the most controversial race ever, he actually managed to finish P4, which isn't so bad in an AlphaTauri. So because of them flashes of potential, surprisingly, Red Bull actually kept him on for 2022. However, 2022 wasn't really that much better for Yuki. Gasly beat him again in the championship standings. However, this time the points margin was a lot smaller, but that's because the AlphaTauri was nowhere near as good in 2022 compared to 2021. But again, Yuki made way too many mistakes during his second season in F1. For example, at the Canadian Grand Prix, he was coming out the pit lane halfway through the race, hit a bump in the track, locked up, went straight into the wall. No F1 driver should ever crash coming out of a pit lane. Maybe if it was in the wet you could argue it's a little bit more acceptable, but even then still it's quite embarrassing. No F1 driver should ever crash coming into the pit lane or coming out of a pit lane, especially when the track's bone dry, which it was in that race. Yuki did later admit that that was the worst mistake he had made in his career so far, and then at the next race in Silverstone, Tsunoda decided to send a move all the way back from Tokyo on his teammate Pierre Gasly, causing both of the cars to collide with each other at Village. Both cars were able to continue in the race, but it did cost the team valuable time and positions. But it doesn't stop there. In the Singapore Grand Prix, on the 36th lap, the track was quite slippy, but Yuki locked up again, sending his car straight into the wall, and this time completely out of the race. Again, to be fair to Tsunoda, he wasn't the only one to make mistakes in that race. And despite all of that, he was still given another chance in 2023. And this time, we did actually start to see a little bit more consistency and the Tsunoda we saw in Formula 2 during 2020. Again, the AlphaTauri wasn't amazing in 2023, and Pierre Gasly left to go to Alpine. However, Yuki was still able to pick up a few points for the team, and even beat his teammates during that season. But take that with a pinch of salt, because he had about 3 different teammates. But Yuki was definitely starting to make a lot less mistakes, and you could see his consistency was starting to get there. So in 2024, Tsunoda was put up against Daniel Ricciardo, and he consistently outperformed Ricciardo in the first 8 races. During those first 8 races, Tsunoda beat Ricciardo 7 times in qualifying, whilst also reaching Q3 7 times. He also picked up points in 5 of the first 8 races, and to go along with that, a really impressive P7 in Australia. For the first half of the 2024 season, the Racing Bull was not a bad car. So at the start of 2024, because the Racing Point was one of the best cars on the grid, you might say you should expect Tsunoda to be getting points in all of those races. And you would be right. But also remember in 2021 when the AlphaTauri was on a similar level, he had the same chance to pick up points on a regular basis, but he wasn't able to. Therefore, the fact he was able to do it in 2024 shows what a long way he has come and how much more consistent he is. Yuki was that impressive during 2024 that, come after Singapore, Red Bull actually booted Ricciardo out of the team because Ricciardo was nowhere near beating Tsunoda. And the reason Ricciardo was put into that car was to try and prove to Red Bull he's still good enough to be a Red Bull driver. And if he was to beat Tsunoda, then he would be in the Red Bull seat for 2025. Because he was nowhere near Tsunoda, Red Bull were like, well, he's clearly not the driver he was. He's clearly not good enough anymore, so we might as well just get rid of him. So Yuki even exceeded Red Bull's expectations in 2024. And it's not the first time where Yuki's been so good that his teammate got sacked halfway through the season. In 2023, Nick de Vries was nowhere near Tsunoda, and after the halfway point of the season, which I think was Hungary in 2023, Red Bull were like, well, de Vries isn't good enough, so we're going to get rid of him and we're going to put Ricciardo in. And then we all know now what happened with Ricciardo. So after Singapore 2024, when Ricciardo said his goodbyes to F1, Red Bull put Yuki Tsunoda up against Liam Lawson. And again, Tsunoda was beating Lawson, or at least he was matching pace with Lawson. In qualifying, he beat him 5-4. And in the final 6 races, Yuki beat Liam Lawson in 4 out of the 6. And also, don't forget, at the Brazilian Grand Prix, he achieved P3 in qualifying in what were probably the most tricky conditions of the entire season. So from all of this improvement from Tsunoda, you would have thought, oh, maybe he should get a chance at Red Bull. And I was even thinking Tsunoda was going to get put in a Red Bull. But he didn't. Liam Lawson got the seat, despite the fact Yuki beat him in most of the races during the final bit of 2024. So why didn't Tsunoda get the chance to drive for Red Bull? Well, there's actually quite a few reasons behind it. First of all, I don't think Red Bull actually trusts Tsunoda, not as much as they do with Liam Lawson anyway. I think because of Yuki's first 2 seasons in F1 where he was really inconsistent, it put doubts in Red Bull's mind about, well, okay, maybe he's been more consistent over the last 2 seasons, but how's he going to handle that pressure going into a bigger team? Red Bull were basically saying they don't think Yuki can handle the pressure because driving for a big team brings even more pressure to a driver, and Yuki hasn't really shown so far that he can drive that well when he is under pressure. So Red Bull basically don't think Tsunoda's good enough to drive for a top team. Also, Yuki's never really been part of the Red Bull Academy. He was always part of Honda's driving academy. And the reason he had ties to Red Bull in the first place to get a seat with a sister team was because Honda was supplying engines to Red Bull. So it was a good look for a Japanese driver to be driving for a team with Japanese engines. However, Liam Lawson's been part of the Red Bull Academy since 2019. Red Bull have been eyeing Liam Lawson up for 6 years now. And because he's got more of a connection to Red Bull than Tsunoda does, it makes more sense for Red Bull to put Lawson in the car. Furthermore, in 2026, Red Bull are going to be ditching Honda and they're going to be partnering with Ford. So after this season, them Honda connections are gone. I feel like Yuki was always Red Bull's last resort. If Ricciardo wasn't going to impress, which he didn't, then they were always going to put Lawson in the car. And unfortunately for Yuki, Liam Lawson was impressive. If Lawson didn't impress, then it would be Yuki in that car right now. And again, unfortunately for Yuki, that's the way F1 is. It's ruthless and it's harsh, but it's always been like that. But in 2025, it's going to be make or break for Yuki. If he's got a good mentality, then he needs to show Red Bull what they're missing out on. And the best way he can do that is by performing to his best. However, the decision from Red Bull not to take Yuki on in 2025 might even destroy his confidence, as Red Bull have clearly shown that they don't believe in Yuki. So now I think Yuki's got to start looking at other options and try and get out of that Red Bull system. Because he's Japanese, he's always going to have that link with Honda. And in 2026, Honda are going to be partnering with Aston Martin. So maybe Yuki could start looking at getting a seat for Aston Martin in 2026. However, that will only be possible if Alonso finally calls it a day, which could actually happen if Aston Martin have a really poor season and Alonso goes like, well, this team doesn't look like it's going anywhere. I'm 43 now, I think it's time to retire. And we all know Stroll's not going anywhere. I think another option for Yuki could potentially be Audi. I feel if Bortoleto doesn't impress this season, then Audi are going to start looking at other options for 26, and Yuki should be one of the top candidates. Overall for Yuki, it's really important that this season is the best season he has had so far in F1. It's absolutely vital to Yuki and to his career that he gets out of the Red Bull system, because Red Bull clearly don't think he's good enough. Personally, I think Yuki is actually a really good driver and has potential to be one of the best in F1. He's still very young and has many seasons left in his career. I'll be honest, after the first 2 seasons, I thought Yuki was going to end up being a flop. However, after 2023 and 2024, he has changed my mind. But I'll say it again, 2025 is make or break for Yuki. Do you think Yuki is a good driver, and in your opinion, has he improved since 2021? Let me know down in the comments. If you want more F1 news and discussions such as this one, subscribe to the channel. As always, thank you so much for watching. Red Bull clearly saw Yuki as a risk, but if you want to hear about another risk that Mercedes are taking in 2025, click on this video here. And I will see you all in the next one.